The name's Ty, and you're listening to Heartland, a fan podcast from a fan perspective. And for those who are only listening, you might be wondering what the heck was that intro? Well, it's Halloween, so I'm dressed up as Ty from the pilot. I have the curtain bangs, I have the choker, the early 2000s style. Last year, I was Charlotte the chicken. The year before that, I was Goth Mallory. So this is what I'm giving you this year. Before we get started, I'm just gonna arrange my fringe first because this is going to drive me nuts.
2 hours later.
The hair has been pulled back, which means business. So let's get into your comments. First, we have a returning regular. The story chemist says, I hope the Lindy storyline of being afraid to ride horses is not resolved in this or a couple of episodes. It should run into next season. We can have many storylines about this and how it affects Amy and all those in the family who are horse lovers. I was surprised Amy wasn't firmer in dealing with Logan and making sure he knew this was a big mistake, but to drill into him to make sure he does everything he can to make sure a horse is ready. Because in this case, he rushed things to impress Tim and his girlfriend. He quit, but we all know he will be back. Beth's storyline was about Shane and how he felt abandoned by the Heartland family. Great acting by all for those scenes. But we all know Jack, Lou, and Amy do not take to anyone new in the family. Look at Lisa. She spent years as part of the family, but isn't really part of it. Same with Peter and now Jessica. The Heartland family is ready to take in strangers and make them family, but anyone who has an external, married into, step sibling, relationship with the family is overlooked or treated as bystanders, with the only exception being Ty, the golden boy who could do no wrong. It's one of the things I do not like about them and hope they address more detail as time goes by to understand their reluctance for this behavior. Lisa and Jack, with him not really trying for Lisa, as usual, until he eventually notices Lisa is hurt by his lack of effort. I hope they can tell us why Jack does this to her and not just that he hates change. That's a cowardly excuse. Can we not delve deeper into the psychology of a character 17 seasons in? I hope I am not disappointed by Lisa's storyline next episode with the major plot for her. Katie's storyline is on point and her reactions and feelings are just as accurate. I hope we see more of her development, but I sometimes think they don't know what to do with her. She had such a beautiful relationship with Lisa when a small child, but now they don't show any of that. I feel Lisa can be a wonderful mentor and confidant for her, but we all know that is never going to happen, and Lisa is not family, and according to the writers and co, she can't be of any help. Then Sprague said, these last two episodes have been the most open-hearted, honest episodes of this family coming together I've seen in maybe forever. Thank you for having Lisa in this episode. The storyline with Shane and his sisters has been a long time coming and was very well done by the three of them. Looking forward to the next episode. Then Ori said, last week I wrote I wanted to see more of Nathan. Well, maybe next week then. It was a great episode. I really love to see Shane at Heartland and have some realistic reunion. The awkwardness from the sisters feeling like Shane is a stranger. Shane's feelings was totally justified. I like Chloe for the moment, but again, the venue for their wedding was double booked. Like, again? No luck in this family with that. Jack and Lisa are cute. Jack making effort for Lisa. Love them. Feel a little disappointed with Logan quitting. Will he change his mind? And does that mean he will be gone for good? I hope it's not the end. It was a great episode. Love how Heartland is a great escape for me after all these years. It makes me feel nostalgic, especially when old characters come back. Last thing, I'd like to steal Amy's wardrobe. I hope it's understandable. My English is not great. Your English was fine and I understood everything, so thanks for that message. Then Slipstripper said, so much to process in this episode. It definitely needs a second watch later in the week, but here are my first thoughts. In a sense, I am happy to see all the drama because it shows that things are not as easy or perfect as they seem. Lindy was excellent in this episode. She pulled at my heart for sure, giving away her stuffies and worrying about Miley, but then asking for them back at the end. I hope she learns the lesson Amy was trying to teach, but not too quickly. Fixing people is not as easy as fixing horses. I loved her telling Shane the story of the stones. It's great to see the history of Heartland living on with her. As for Shane, I'm glad to hear some of what he had been going through all these years. Chloe was helpful in showing how much Heartland and the family meant to him, even if he didn't want to show it at first. Amy and Lou were very honest and real with their struggles as well. I hope we get to see more of the rebuilding and not just a happy wedding later in the season. Midlife Crisis Lou is going to be very interesting to watch. I hope we learn more about what she said to Tim this episode. There are definitely some issues there to address. Also, just realize we never see anyone at the Dude Ranch anymore except friends and family who presumably don't pay. Not a great business situation. It was good to see Lisa back, although the whole dance planning thing seemed very random. Also, getting a little tired of Lisa suggests something, Jack hates it. Lisa gets upset, Jack comes around. It would be nice to see the two of them try a new plot point. I'm glad we saw Parker back this episode. I'm curious why she quit the diner and how she got where she is. People go through phases, but this one threw me off. I hope she and Katie work it out. I love seeing Katie dancing by herself. This is the energy I wish I had at her age to just be her best self and let things happen. I'm kind of glad she didn't dance with the guy at the end, but I can only imagine how confused he was when she said, "You can dance beside me." So random, but he did, and I respect that. I'm not sure what I think will happen next, but I hope for more Shane, more Lindy, and more with Parker and Katie. I feel like she will have a lot to say about her dirt biking adventures. Then Dip said, I'm late commenting on the episode and struggling to find something new to say about it. I did notice that Lou and Amy said that the discord between Tim and Miranda was what made them unsure of how to interact with Shane. I'm very curious now as to what we will find out when Miranda comes to Heartland for the wedding. At the end of season 6, Miranda wanted the three of them to try and become a family, but changed her mind after speaking to Jack. She did this specifically to protect Tim and Shane's relationships, so how did it all go wrong? Will the writers explain this, gloss over this, or throw Miranda under the bus? I will have to wait and see. Then Kristen Hartland said, this was the best episode so far. It was dramatic, but also it got me emotional a couple of times. I was glad to see Shane return. I like him and I felt for him for being neglected. He's making all this effort reconnecting with his sisters after being cut off years ago. Not easy. Of course, there's always someone to blame, this case Tim and Miranda and their hatred towards each other. I'm glad Lou and Amy realized that Shane was just a kid and it's not the child's responsibility to keep the family together. They were both adults and they should have known better. As for Tim being excited and enthusiastic about the reunion and asking the girls to make an effort with Shane, isn't every parent's dream and wish that their kids get along and have a bond? Shane and Chloe complemented each other. Chloe has a different energy and is very easygoing. And Shane has changed a lot since his teenage years. And what Lou said to Tim about asking her things she cannot do, I have a feeling we'll find out more about that in later episodes. And it will not be good for Tim. Love seeing Lisa, finally. The only one missing was Jessica. Jack and Lisa were cute on the dance floor, and I'm so glad Lisa called him out on his behavior. Sometimes we do the uncomfortable because it's important to the other person, to our partner. Best line this episode. Go, Lisa! Katie was so beautiful dancing on her own, and she looked confident and brave. She's becoming strong and independent. Just amazing. Love how fast everyone recovers after an accident. Truly amazes me. Glad to see Tim and Miley getting along. Will she be his next prodigy? Logan is blaming himself for a reason. He didn't do a thorough job with the horse, and he knows it. It's guilt. I'm sorry to say, but I find Logan and his work with horses pretty boring. No fun to watch at all. Lindy having nightmares. I wish they would have involved Lou because I'm sure she had experienced long years of nightmares after Tim's accident. And Lindy jumping in Tim's arms in excitement that there will be a wedding was purely adorable. Then Sharon said, best episode so far. Everyone facing their fears, but I think Lou is yet to face hers, which we'll find out in coming episodes. Lindy waking from a bad dream, expected, but as a mom, when my son was frightened, I would hold him, giving him reassurance, which is what Amy should have done. Good to see Lisa, finally, and good on her for calling Jack out. Should have been done a long time ago. There is still nothing in or at the ranch to say that Lisa lived there. There should be something of everyone to say they lived there and not just Jack and Gigi Lindy. Shane confronting his sisters was needed and glad that the girls faced up to their shortcomings. Logan receiving tough love from Amy was needed, but whether he let it sink in is another. Wanting to quit is a lack of confidence in himself, especially with it being Miley getting hurt. Parker was jealous of Katie when the cool kids wanted to be with her, and Katie didn't let that happen to her friend. But now the shoe is on the other foot. Parker turns her back. Typical teenager life, maybe something Parker hasn't experienced before. At least she is finally smiling and laughing. Katie pushing her shyness aside and confidently dancing on her own. Bravo! Not many young girls would do that. Fred and Ginger love it. Still thinking of Lou and her midlife crisis, there's definitely something going on there. I just have a horrible feeling that she's thinking of leaving Heartland. Hope I'm so wrong about that. I'm loving the sister scenes. Amber and Michelle work so well together. Looking forward to episode 5. Should be interesting seeing Nathan again. Then HL Horses said, really like this episode. First off, I think the Lindy being afraid of horses is a good story and a nice twist for a family who you would think would never deal with it, except Lou after her dad's accident. But that was only addressed a bit in season 1. But how the heck is Miley okay? She was literally unconscious. In the next episode, she's driving. I wish we knew how far apart the episodes were. I'm glad we got to see Logan feeling guilt and doubting himself. Amy testing him and giving him some tough love were good scenes and reminds that Amy is pretty good at teaching slash coaching. I find it interesting that he quit. We shall see how long that lasts. The Shane stuff was pretty good. I really appreciate that they addressed how long it's been since he's been at Heartland. I wasn't expecting them to say Amy and Lou never reached out to him since the last time he was here though. I was fully expecting them to close over how long it's been, like they tend to do, but I like that they didn't. It brought some good and realistic scenes. I really like seeing Shane back at the ranch and Dude Ranch and with the family. The start with Lou and Amy and re-entry Baines I really enjoyed. Even though we didn't see too much of her, I also liked Chloe. It was also a good idea for them to have Shane really just remember the bad memories of the last few times he was at the ranch with the flashbacks. I never really thought of it that way since as a kid he enjoyed it so much, but it makes sense he retains those bad memories too. To close out the storyline, the Dude Ranch scene with the siblings was pretty good, and having the wedding there sets up the finale. I loved finally seeing Lisa. And imagine my surprise when Jack and Lisa actually had a storyline this episode. I wasn't expecting anything since they weren't in the synopsis, but I'm so happy they did. Their plot was so cute. Lisa asking Jack to the dance was super cute. I laughed at Jack doing dance lessons, and Tim just teasing the heck out of him. Jack coming to the dance and then dancing was just so great. I always love to see them dance. Katie didn't have a big plot this episode, but her issues with Parker are very realistic for their age. I like that she danced by herself and when Lisa kind of fixed her hair. The little moments make the scene sometimes. Also, Lou is such a clutch mom by suggesting shopping spree. Lou's comment about the past with Tim should be interesting when it gets brought up again in a future episode. Tim's comment about him not having a midlife crisis was pretty funny. Some final notes. I love to see Lou writing, but this always makes me question where Venus is, as I don't think they ever wrote her off. Probably in the well with the others. Speaking of the well, I was fully expecting them to pull Pal out of it just because Shane was back, but they didn't. I also love a good stone mention too. All in all, good episode. I'm super excited for next week as it's Lisa heavy, so I really hope we get it in the promo. Then Smoking Holster said, "Okay, I found this episode somewhat awkward. I didn't dislike it, I just don't agree with some of the storyline, namely two things. First, that this family in particular lost touch with Shane over 12 or 13 years, and second, that Jack doesn't know how to two-step. I just don't believe that in this family that talks about family like it's life itself would, for any reason other than parental interference, lose touch with a brother, especially Amy. It never felt right to me, which is why I always put Shane into my fanfics. I get that the writers needed some way to get around what amounts to their carelessness through the years, but this stretched it for me. By the way, I feel the same way about Amy never mentioning Luke. It feels awkward to me that there is absolutely no mention of him at all. Amy is pretty clear that she loved him. They were building him a room, etc. At least show the plaque he made and take a second to have her look at it and smile. Something. It was great seeing Jack and Lisa together, but as I said, there's no way I believe that a rodeo guy who marries a cabaret singer doesn't know how to two-step. I actually remember they've danced a few times over the years, and it sure looked like a two-step. Anyway, glad he went back and got the lesson and escorted Lisa to the dance, though it would have been nice to figure out how Lisa, of all people, got onto this committee. Personal addition. My wife and I took dancing lessons before our wedding, so we'd know what we were doing at all. We had fun, but were never really good at it. I love Katie, and once again, Bay is absolutely the most perfect person to play this role. Dancing alone was perfect, and telling Brandon he could dance along, how amazing was that? I kind of figured that it would take Miley's recovery to change Lindy, and glad they did it. I wasn't too shocked to see she recovered that quickly. She's young and it's easy to just say sore and had the wind knocked out of her rather than something like a concussion. Way more believable than Jack recovering from getting caught in the Bronx chute and trampled. The Longan quitting was a shock to the system because I like his character and that Amy has someone to pass along her methods to. I also like him and Miley as a couple, so I hope they get around this and he comes back or at least doesn't leave the show. No Jessica in a show where her stepson shows up for a visit seemed weird to me. Another one of those one line in the script would have solved that moment. Anyway, on to the next. Then No Context Heartland said, I really like this episode. The combo of working with Rocky to help with Lindy's fear and Shane's return to Heartland and everything that came with it was really wonderful. I like that they didn't shy away from some angst between Lou, Amy, and Shane. If it had been easy, I don't think it would have felt right. I might have teared up at the fire pit scene and I will not apologize for it. Also, I hope we get more of what Lou mentioned during the brief argument with Tim. Do you know how long I've wanted more exploration of Lou's past and her drama and what she's gone through? Most interesting character, I said what I said. Another thing I really liked was the Katie and Parker plot this episode. It's such a universal experience growing up to drift from friends during that time of your life when people are starting to date and make new friends and focus more on other things. I like that it wasn't totally resolved by the end of the episode, but I really hope that we haven't seen the last of their friendship being as close as it was for the past couple of seasons. Also, Jiza was so cute. Then Stephanie said, I really enjoyed this episode. There's so much to unpack. First of all, I really enjoyed seeing Jack and Lisa have a storyline. Love seeing them take dance lessons together and Lisa asking Jack to be her date to the school dance. And him later surprising her with a corsage. That was just all kinds of adorable. It was so good to see Shane. I also really like Chloe. They make a really sweet couple. I'm glad they acknowledged that there has been separation from family and they were all feeling distant with one another. Instead of glossing over the fact it has been several years since they all talked to each other. I thought Amy, Lou, and Shane's talk by the campfire was important. I like that they own up to their mistakes and are wanting to repair the relationship. I hope we hear mentions of them talking to Shane and Chloe and they continue to be an active part of each other's lives and they don't just get tossed aside again. I feel like the only thing missing from this episode was Jessica. It would have been so nice to have her around and actually interacting with Shane and, of course, meeting Chloe. I wasn't totally expecting Logan to quit working with horses. I did like they had Amy trying to help him through that and she wasn't babying him. She showed him tough love, which is sometimes needed in those situations. I hope this isn't the end of him working with horses, although I have a feeling he'll come around at some point. I would hate to see this accident permanently affect him. Now, about the horse plot. First of all, how the heck is Miley okay? As others have stated, she was unconscious literally last episode. How much time has passed for her to be able to drive and then ride a horse? I feel like Heartland never actually does a good job at portraying how long an injury lasts and the side effects that happen and how long the healing process takes. I do like, however, we dove into Lindy's fear of horses and she wasn't just magically okay with them this episode. It made it more realistic that after seeing a traumatic event, she needed time to be comfortable around them again. Some final thoughts. I really felt bad for Katie this episode. It's hard seeing someone you were once close with make new friends and become super busy. I would love it if at some point Parker and Katie talk it out and she doesn't become resentful towards Parker, or even see Katie make new friends and really start to thrive. I really like seeing Lou be there for her and take her out shopping to try and cheer her up. That reminds me of in the early seasons when Amy and Lou took out Mallory for dinner after seeing her friend ditch her. I just love seeing these mom and daughter moments between Katie and Lou. And later seeing Lisa encourage her to have fun at the dance was such a sweet moment. We don't get to see scenes with them too often, so when we do, it's always special. Thanks for all your comments again. I don't have much to add because you said a lot of the things that I was already thinking. I watched the episode twice. First time it felt kind of clunky, or I don't know, it's just something about it. Like some scenes felt rushed, some acting felt like it wasn't really matching to the rhythm of the scene. And then some directing choices were throwing me off. So I was like, wait, I need to see this again. And during the second viewing, it felt a little more familiar to what I'm used to. During the second viewing, I always feel like I can appreciate the plot a lot more. Like whenever I start watching the episode for the first time, it's like, okay, so what's happening next? And oh, interesting. And what's gonna happen with those people? And then during the second viewing, you sort of already have that experience at the back of your mind. So, for example, with this episode, it was really nice to see that a lot of the storylines, or maybe even all of the storylines, really had to do with fear and being uncomfortable and facing fears and all that. So, while you're watching, you of course see those themes, but then when you're rewatching, you're like, oh yeah, all of them were actually about the same thing, but from a different perspective. I'm going to start with the Shane storyline. I'm really happy to see him back, especially at Heartland. You know, I've enjoyed seeing him meeting Tim in these neutral grounds, as Jack said. But bringing him to Heartland, it definitely changed the dynamic, and I really enjoyed the approach to the whole thing because it has been something I've been wondering. Like, have they kept in touch with, Lou and Amy and Shane? But apparently not. And those emotions and that awkwardness coming to surface in environment that's sort of familiar but not anymore. It was really interesting choice and I loved it. And I love that the storyline was sort of Shane driven because I sort of expected it to be typical Tim pressures everyone and then it sort of explodes. And yeah, there were elements of that, but I think it's refreshing to see that Lou and Amy have their faults too. I think sometimes the show has a tendency to shy away from those flaws or pretend they don't exist, or I don't know. So it was nice to see that they can make mistakes and own up to those mistakes because it's real life. And, I think it's important to see that they're not perfect. And to me, that makes those characters even more realistic to me. And I hope they keep this momentum going. I also really like Chloe. She had such an endearing quality to her. She had good chemistry with Sam, who plays Shane, and just the how she sort of stepped into the family. It felt really natural. So props to Jennifer Hui, who played Chloe. And I hope we see more of her. Obviously, later on this season, we have Shane and Chloe's wedding. So at least there's that. And speaking of the wedding, I'm not sure I'm a fan of how they sort of picked up Ranch as the location. Obviously, we knew that the wedding was going to happen in Hudson, but then, it being about Dude Ranch, it was sort of surprised, but not. I fully expected the whole secret or whatever Shane was holding back to be about him wanting to have the wedding there because it's an important plot for him. But then it was really about the awkwardness between him and his family of this side. So it was kind of like, oh, they could have done it a little bit differently, but as for the Lindy storyline, I like that they took it slow, that it wasn't just a quick fix. And like most of you said, I hope that this continues into the next episodes because I do think that it's very interesting point of view to have Lindy be scared of horses or not wanting to deal with horses. I mean, obviously, we saw at the end of this episode that she wants to return to what was before the accident, but at the same time, I would sort of hope that it would maybe allow Amy to have this moment where she's like, does Lindy actually want this? Or is she doing this because I'm her mother and that's what she sees? I know obviously it feels like Lindy wants this, but it would be interesting to sort of have that moment of reflection of how much she influences her daughter. I was really disappointed that they didn't actually do anything with the Lou and Lindy parallel with the accident from Lou's past and now this with Lindy. I was like so close to thinking they would actually do it when Lou and Amy were having that conversation at the couch, but then it wasn't the case. I don't know that them talking to Shane really proved anything to Lindy. But yeah, it wasn't like bad, but I think that would have made the episode so much better. I mean, it was really good already, but even better to just have that moment between Lou and Lindy where Lou was sort of go like, "Oh, well, I had something bad happen to me in the past as well, so I totally understand where you're coming from and all that." But it was not the case, unfortunately. Quickly about the Logan thing, I was surprised that he quit, but then in a way, it's interesting because we never really see that in the show. Like, I mean, we still don't know what's going to happen with that, but often people quit, but then they come back quickly and like, who was I kidding? I love this. But I would have loved to see Miley get a little bit more hurt. Maybe Logan sort of being there for her and that sort of starting the process of all of this. But I guess this is fine as well. But we know Logan will be back, so I wonder how the storyline will evolve. And I hope that it affects Amy on some level because you would think that it would, because that's her prodigy. And him just quitting like that, you would think that that would sort of create some kind of internal conflict like, could have done something different? Am I a good teacher? Is my approach right? Like all these things that go into being a teacher of some sort. So I really hope that that throws a storyline toward Amy as well. Just like a lot of you said, I do think that there's more to come from that line Lou said to Tim in the kitchen, and I can't wait for it because I just really love having more background story for Lou. So I'm really excited to see what they have in store for us. But I really like the scene with Lou and Tim in the kitchen where she's, piling the corn and he's talking about, the midlife crisis and him not having one. I think that was very sweet. And also the joke sort of lifted the spirits of those two characters and it just felt very them. Not much to say about Jack and Lisa other than, obviously it was nice to see them back together and I didn't expect to see sort of big storyline for them. I mean, in a way it wasn't like epic, but it was still nice to see them reconnect in this episode before crap hits the fan. But then it's also kind of the same old story, like Jack being stubborn or fuddy-duddy or whatever the term was that Lisa used, and then coming around. But, I'll take it if I can just see them together. But I hope that there will be fresh storylines for them this season, so fingers crossed. As for Katie's storyline, I felt like there were some plot holes in it. Like, did Katie and Parker change schools? Still struggling to understand the Canadian school system and their age and all that. So I'm like, how did that happen? Like, who has Katie been hanging out with at school? If this is a surprise for her, or I don't know, like the starting point felt kind of random, but I do appreciate the storyline itself. I think Bay did great job with it, and she looked absolutely beautiful in her retro look, and the dance plays was beautiful. Like what I loved the most was when Brandon came and asked if they could dance together. She was like, "No, I'm good," and then said, but you can dance beside me, I guess. So it was her creating her own boundaries, but also being kind at the same time. And I really love that. And should be interesting to know what will happen with Katie kind of flying solo now. And speaking of which, should we see what we're in store for with the next episode? So the next episode is episode 5, and interestingly enough, it has the same name that a previous episode has, which is How to Say Goodbye. I don't know if they will change that, but it's also really interesting that both of these episodes were written by Heather Conkey. I guess she forgot that she already had named a previous episode with the same name. But anyways, the synopsis says, Amy and Jack train Blue for a competition. Lisa deals with a difficult loss. Lou lets Jessica down in their partnership for the gallery. Katie secretly buys a used dirt bike. So, sounds like a good episode to me, but we'll see. I'll see you again next week, and until then, keep your noses clean and your powder dry, as they say, and happy Halloween. Bye.